Минуло вже більше піввіку від трагічної події хижацького акту вимирення навмисно створеним голодом кількох мільйонів українського населення, проведеного комуністичною Москвою з холоднокровним розрахунком, безприкладним цинізмом і надлюдською жорстокістю. За цей час в світі виросли і вступили в життя два нових покоління людей, від яких залежить майбутнє світу, і які дуже мало або й зовсім не знають про нищення голодом українського народу. А тим більше про причини та методи проведення цього диявольського акту політичного терору, в порівнянні з яким меркнуть усі найжахливіші катастрофи в світі, які були до того. Наш святий обов'язок українців у вільному світі сказати всім людям правду про голодомор українського народу у 1932-33 роках і розкрити справжні причини небувалої до того у світі акції людонищення. З цією метою зроблено оцей фільм, який ви зараз побачите, із архівних документальних матеріалів, кінохроніки і окремих свідчень очевидців. Для загального зрозуміння озвучено цей фільм прийнятою в міжнародних стосунках англійською мовою. Стихійні катастрофи голоду з природних причин досить часто трапляються на світі. Але навмисно створені голоди робили лише москалі в Україні. Про що навіть за царського часу писав Шевченко. Гуляє князь, гуляють гості, ревуть палати на помості, а голод стогне на селі. І стогне він, стогне по всій Україні. Тисячами гинуть голодні люди, а скирти гніють. Після поразки Української Народної Республіки у 1921 році вичерпана громадянською війною Московщина кинулась за українським добром. Спеціальні продовольчі загони москалів забирали в Україні зерно, м'ясо, товщі і все, що можна було взяти. І вивозили в Московщину. На Україні почався голод, а москалям було повно харчів, забраних з України. В той час, за приблизними підрахунками, вмерло від голоду понад 3 мільйони людей. По закінченні Другої світової війни обдерті, голодні москалі знову ринулися на Україну і забрали там під мітлу все, що тільки можна було їсти. В Україні знову почався голод. І тоді вимерло, за дуже скромними підрахунками, десь понад 5 мільйонів людей. Усе це були грабунки, так би мовити, грабункового порядку, коли Москва забирала з України харчі для себе. Голод же, влаштований ними в 1932-33 роках, мав цілком інший характер і інше підложжя. Московщина мала мало всього достатньо, їй не потрібно було більш нічого брати з України. Цей голод був актом політичного терору, спрямованого на винищення націоналізму в Україні. І в першу чергу селян України, які протягом віків були основним носієм національної духовості. В теоретичній праці по національному питанню Ленін висловив таку формулу. Селянство являє собою основну армію національного руху. Отже, національне питання – це, по суті, селянське питання. Таким чином, винищивши селянство, можна позбутися основного джерела національного духу, який розвиває в народі національну свідомість, національну єдність, національний спротив чужому поневоленню. Оце була причина Голодомору, створеного в Україні в 1933 році. Не тільки в межах УССР, означених москалями, а й по всій етнографічній території України. Як Кубань, де тоді було 68% населення українців, та Воронежський і Курський округ, де було українців 34% населення. Передумовою цього масового розгорного наступу на українську націю було національне відродження України. З початком НЕПу, тобто нової економічної політики, розвитку приватної ініціативи для відбудови знищеного війною господарства, широко розгорнулося відродження національного життя українського народу в усіх галузях економіки, культури та освіти. Зачався розквіт української літератури і мистецтва. У школах викладалося все українською мовою. Усі російські написи на крамницях, залізницях, на вулицях та інших установах було замінено українськими. Газети друкувалися українською мовою. Впроваджено українську мову в радіо, в театрах, кіно, в рекламі та інше. Все листування в установах впровадилось українською мовою. Для тих, хто не знав української мови, були курси українізації. А хто не знав мови і противився українізації, того звільняли з роботи. Зміцнила економіка села, яке стало заможнім і включилося в загальний розвиток національного життя. Керівниками уряду і партії в Україні були тоді хоч і комуністи, але українці. Україна, хоч і керована комуністами, мала ззовні український вигляд. В умовах загальної українізації почався відроджувати і український національний дух. Про міру цього відродження може свідчити хоч би такий факт, що навіть комуністичний письменник Микола Хвильовий кинув у народ гасло «Геть від задрипанки Москви, подалі від Московщини та ближче до західної культури». Це відродження українського національного духа занепокоїло Москву. Але вона не була певна, що зможе задушити українську національну духовість без небезпеки викликання революції. Цим разом соціальної, не соціальної, а національної. Тому було вирішено підготовити ґрунтовну акцію винищення українського національного духу в Україні, щоб не було можливості відродження його в майбутньому, як це було зроблено в 18-му році. Для цього спрямовано головний удар на українське селянство, як джерело національної сили народу, пристосувавши до проведення колективізації на селі. Підготовку до цього було зроблено ще в 1931 році, а безпосередню акцію розпочато постановою Третьої партійної конференції в липні 1932 року. Керував цим голодомором керівник жидівської секції Комуністичної партії СССР, перший заступник Сталіна Лазар Каганович і його відпоручники в Україні Поляк Косіор і Москваль Постишев. Не буду зупинятися на методах проведення цього диявольського акту людонищення, ви це побачите в фільмі, Скажу тільки, що найбільше лютував голод у лютому місяці 1933 року, коли в середньому вмирало 25 тисяч осіб щодня, тобто 17 осіб щохвилини. І в той же час на всіх перехрестях вулиць радіо голосувало: жити стало краще, жити стало веселіше. Документальних відомостей про кількість померлих з голоду немає. Проте чомусь прийнято рахувати, що вимерло 7 мільйонів осіб. Хоч тодішній керівник НКВД в Україні Балицький офіційно заявив, що вимерло 10 мільйонів осіб. Цю саму кількість згадував Хрущов і навіть сам Сталін. А вони, напевно, знають ліпше, як хто-небудь інший, скільки людей було винищено. Разом з винищенням селян голодом розгорнено широкий наслід на українське життя, який полягав в остаточній ліквідації української національної культури, української провідної інтелігенції і навіть українських елементів комуністичної партії комсомолі, коли було викинено з партії 46%, а з комсомолу 49% українців. Почалася шалена русифікація України та нищення всього, що хоч трошки мало в собі національне забарвлення. Було русифіковано пресу, мову, освіту, державний апарат, видавництво, наукові установи та вищі учбові заклади. Почалися масові арешти, розстріли та висилка на Сибір без ніякого суду видатних діячів і провідних людей України, письменників, артистів, педагогів, науковців, економістів, господарників, діячів культу та політично-адміністративного апарату держави. Видатних комуністів знищили навіть тільки за те, що вони були комуністи, українці. Було повністю ліквідовано Українську автокефальну православну церкву, а її діячів розстріляно або вислано на Сибір. В кінці цього шаленого московського катування з кожних 10 осіб української провідної інтелігенції лишилося в живих тільки 2. А 80% було вивезено у Сибір без ніякої надії на повернення або відразу розстріляно. Таким чином, було знищено увесь провідний елемент можливого національного відродження, а також виморено голодом понад 1/3 селянства, основи національної сили народу. А на їхнє місце наслано москалів, кількість яких протягом 1 року збільшилась вдвоє. Після закінчення голодового нищення українських селян на 12-му з'їзді Комуністичної партії України в січні 1934 року, який увійшов в історію партії як з'їзд перемоги, одверто й зухвало було виявлено мету цього навмисного голодомору. Виголошуючи звіт, Постишев заявив: 1933 рік був роком розгрому української контрреволюції. Партія провела геркулесову роботу по ліквідації націоналістичних елементів в Україні. Отже, голод був не наслідком уведення нової системи господарювання, не покаранням селян за небажання вступати в колгоспи, не боротьбою за зерно, як це пояснюють деякі українці у вільному світі, а винищенням українського національного духу і всіх його проявів у житті народу. Можна було б сказати набагато більше про це, але про решту ви дізнаєтесь із документального фільму «Жнива розпачу», який зараз буде показано.
The year 1933. The place, the Soviet Union. Behind the facade, food is being used as a weapon against peoples who have proven troublesome to Moscow. Famine is engineered deliberately in the North Caucasus, the Volga Basin, and Ukraine. The Soviet secret police seal off Ukraine's borders. No one can get out or bring food in. A nation the size of France is strangled by hunger. In less than 2 years, 10 million people die. 7 million of them in Ukraine. 3 million of them children.
This is the most terrible thing I've ever seen. It precisely because of the deliberation with which it was done and the total absence of even any kind of sympathy.
If you revive this terrible past, and you are always shaken again, and it moves you again, and you can't get rid of these terrible pictures you have seen or these terrible reports you have gotten in this period.
Nearest city was 40 miles, so I walked about once a week or so to that city. I could buy for my salary 2 loaves of bread a month. So that's only how we could survive. But the peasants were dying.
This was the first time in my life that I saw people dying. And of course it was very hard.
The untold story of Ukraine's darkest tragedy begins at a time of great optimism and joy in March 1917. A tidal wave of revolution sweeps aside the mighty Tsarist Empire. National boundaries change rapidly with the dramatic shifting of power. Ukrainians grasp the chance to reclaim their independence after 200 years of Russian domination. Kiev, Ukraine's ancient capital, is once again the seat of government. Ukraine's rich and fertile land has supplied Europe with grain for countless generations. Even the ancient Greeks depended on her abundant stores of wheat. History has taught Ukraine that freedom has a price. The people prepare to defend their national republic against all invaders. December 1917. Having consolidated Bolshevik control in Russia, Lenin prepares to reclaim the former Tsarist territories. In 4 ensuing years of chaos, Ukrainians fight Lenin's Red Army, Denikin's White Army, Germans, Poles. Whether the armies march in as enemies or allies, the price is always measured in tons of food. This bountiful country is slowly bled dry. 1921, the dust of battle finally settles. Russia has retaken a major part of the country. Western Ukraine is carved up between Poland, Romania, and Czechoslovakia. The Soviet conquerors ship out more and more grain to feed Moscow. A drought adds to Ukraine's misery. Millions die as the breadbasket of Europe experiences its first famine. Yet this is but a preview of the tragedy to follow. To end the continued resistance to Bolshevik rule, Lenin adopts a new economic policy. Grain requisitions are canceled. The peasant farmer is allowed to trade freely on the open market. The impact on Ukraine is dynamic. 80% of her population are farmers. Hoping to win further support, Lenin tolerates the national revival which has been gathering momentum since the 1917 revolution in Kiev. Ukraine's blossoming renaissance is so powerful, Lenin's successor, Stalin, views the loss of Russian influence with increasing alarm. Ivan Maestrenko was a Marxist instructor of journalism in Soviet Ukraine.
A meeting of the Politburo heard a report that students in Kiev no longer know how to speak Russian. Everyone was shocked. How can that be, they asked. Well, in Ukrainian schools during the 20s, the Russian language was treated like French, German, etc., as a foreign language. And that's why students who came from Ukrainian schools didn't know Russian. And not knowing Russian constituted a clear threat that Kiev would become the capital of an independent Ukraine.
Thousands of Ukrainian language parishes spring up across the country. For the first time since the 17th century, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church reestablishes its independence from the Moscow Patriarchate. In the arts, the flourishing avant-garde models itself on Western, not Russian, culture. Literary circles abound. Writers and poets develop a uniquely Ukrainian literature. Ukraine's leading communist writer, Mykola Khviliovey, elaborates on the dangerous slogan, "Away from Moscow." Even the leader of the Ukrainian Communist Party, Mykola Skripnik, sees the USSR as a kind of League of Nations and argues for greater cultural and political autonomy to win Ukrainians over to communism.
Mykola Skripnik really saw himself as an equal to Stalin, as an independent national ruler. I mean, when he went to Moscow, he'd take a translator, even though he spoke perfect Russian. He tried with some success to establish a cultural protectorate over Ukrainian communities in Russia. He even called for the direct annexation of border areas with the majority of Ukrainians to Soviet Ukraine. So he was actually making territorial demands against Stalin.
By 1928, Stalin is a law unto himself. This efficient, ruthless administrator has eliminated all effective opposition within the Politburo. The dream of a worldwide communist revolution has not materialized. As Stalin strengthens communism within the borders of the USSR, Russian nationalism is increasingly injected into his policies. The strong cultural individuality of Ukraine is no longer tolerated. 1929. Stalin strikes at the nation's heart and mind, its church and intelligentsia. Over the next few years, the systematic liquidation of intellectuals is carried out by the communist regime in Ukraine. 5,000 scholars, scientists, poets, and artists prominent during Ukraine's independence are arrested for allegedly belonging to the SVU, a secret organization the Soviets claim is planning an armed insurrection. Only 45 get a public trial. No evidence is considered necessary. Thousands upon thousands are imprisoned, deported, and executed later as mass arrests continue throughout the 30s. Even the church is accused of involvement in this alleged plot.
Many priests were arrested. Many were sent to Siberian concentration camps. Many shot. My father was one of them. He never came back. I know this from personal experience. 30 bishops were murdered. Thousands of priests were perished. 100,000s of faithful were liquidated. Metropolitan Vasily Pkivsky and his two successors were arrested too. To this day, we don't know what happened to them.
Церкві було повно людей.
The church was full of people.
На конях заїхали.
Some communists rode inside on horseback and ordered me to undress.
Роздівайся. Це березень місяць.
It was March.
На дворі сніг.
There was snow outside.
Я у мештах.
The snow was melting, and I walked in water up to my knees while they rode on horseback.
На конях. Допити різні
They
робили.
interrogated me,
Не відповідав я.
but I didn't answer their questions. And for this, I was rewarded with pistol blows across my back.
По спині.
Почали знімати образи.
They began taking down the icons and smashing them on the ground. The people wanted to go inside the church, but they didn't let them. They ruined everything, smashed everything in the church. And the people stood outside crying because they couldn't do anything. When a man went up to remove the bell, and that bell fell to the ground and rang out, all the people burst into tears. Everyone was weeping and saying goodbye to the bell, because that was the last time that bell rang.
By 1930, only the Russian Orthodox Church remains. In October 1928, Stalin introduces a drastic 5-year plan to transform the Soviet Union from a backward rural society into a modern, self-sufficient industrial empire, virtually overnight. Military defense takes priority. Socialism must be protected from all future enemies. Western technology is urgently needed. To pay for it, Stalin must seize the only exportable resource, grain. And so he decrees the compulsory collectivization of agriculture. Henceforth, all private lands, livestock, and farming implements will belong to the state. The farmer will work as a laborer for pay, like a worker in a factory.
One of the intriguing elements in the Ukraine was that it brought together both the peasant question and the nationality question in a way that was somewhat different than in other areas. Because in the Ukraine, Ukrainians tended to concentrate in rural areas, and in the city areas, particularly in the eastern Ukraine, it was Russian and Jewish populations that dominated. So that any policies that the Bolsheviks adopted toward the peasants had an obvious impact on Ukrainians very directly.
With the destruction of the intellectuals and the church well underway, collectivization allows Stalin to break the farmers, the backbone of the nation. Anticipating fierce resistance, he orders the liquidation of the kulaks as a class. Kulak is a Bolshevik label for the wealthier farmers who own 24 acres of land or hire labor. They are considered the potential leaders in any revolt. The state confiscates not only the lands of the farmers, classified as kulaks, but also all their possessions. It is forbidden by law to assist these enemies of the people. Miroslava Vudka was 7 when her father was exiled. She never saw him again.
In the winter of 1931, they came to evict us from our house. Activists, a group of people, if they could be called people, came into the house and looked over everything and made us very frightened. Then they said, "Get out. This isn't your house anymore." But Mother wouldn't leave. "At least let us spend the rest of the winter here," she begged. "Where can I go with these children and old people?" The men picked her up and threw her outside. A militiaman or activist stood in the doorway as a guard. Mother shouted to us, "Children, don't leave the house." There were tears and screams. It was frightening. We grabbed hold of the benches in the house, screaming and refusing to let go. Then the men began to take us out one by one. They would throw one of us outside and then another. Thus, they threw us out of the house, one by one, all 6 of us.
A courageous neighbor risked deportation to give her family shelter. Some farmers burn their crops, kill their livestock, and flee to the cities. But over the next 3 years, 1 million men, women, and children are rounded up, jammed into sealed boxcars, and shipped off to the remotest corners of the Soviet Union. The survivors work as slave labor, producing raw materials for export to the West. This is the end of the line for many of the best farmers and cultural and religious leaders of Ukraine. Young party activists are brought in from the cities to push through collectivization. Anyone who opposes the measures is denounced as a kulak and deported. Yet resistance comes from all quarters. Not so long ago, the Bolsheviks had given land to the poor. Now they want to take it away.
Thank God I didn't kill anyone. I didn't have anyone put away. I didn't inform on anyone. But I wrote. I was an agitator. I attended meetings and also told the peasants, "Bring in the grain. Hand over the grain. The workers have nothing to eat. There's a world crisis. Hitler has taken over in Germany. The Japanese are advancing into Manchuria. Our country is a fortress that's surrounded by enemies on all sides." And I yelled and begged and swore and threatened, of course. Anyone who doesn't bring in grain had better watch out for the punishing sword of the proletarian dictatorship. Well, I rattled on, as we all did, and believed that it was necessary. My father was very much against collectivization. He said they were ruining the village, that the Bolsheviks knew nothing about farm management, that even the old landlords were better managers than the Soviet district officials. But when you're 18 or 20 years old, who believes his father?
In 1930, Petro Grigorenko was one of the many students brought in from the cities to harvest the grain.
There was rebellion, then sabotage. People did not give up. They attacked the local authorities, usually not killing anyone. They only tied them up and threw them into a barn or simply drove them from the village. And they took back their property, took back their horses, cows, and implements, which had just been taken by the collective. They would take all that back. To crush the rebellions, troops were sent in. They would shoot over the people's heads, but they would also shoot at their heads and their hearts.
Vasil Sokil witnessed a squad of GPU secret police attacking a lone, defiant farmer.
They formed a wide circle around the house. When they realized that the farmer inside had no more bullets left, they threw a grenade into the attic. After that, everything fell silent. The fact of that armed resistance burned itself into my memory. I saw that even under those terrible conditions, there were people who believed in fighting for the right to live as the Ukrainian farmer had always lived.
The wheat is left standing in the fields. The demoralized farmers respond to the ruinous taxes and the presence of troops by simply refusing to work. The grain quotas or taxes are deliberately raised to exceed what the individual farmers can possibly produce. Either they join the collectives where the taxes are 3 times lower or face exile as kulaks. By mid-1932, 3/4 of all Ukrainian farms are collectivized. Then, in August, crippling new quotas are levied on the collectives themselves. Another exorbitant quota is levied in October, and yet another at the beginning of the new year. These levies are impossible to meet.
The working people were getting rationing card, and they could get food from the warehouse in the village, like 1 liter of milk and 2 pounds of bread for a week. But the farmers, the peasants, they could not get anything any place. And so they had nothing to eat right away the second day after those people from government took everything from them.
The regime blames the farmers for the stringent food rationing in the cities. In reality, the Soviets are dumping tons of wheat on Western markets. The 1932 harvest yields enough grain to have fed the entire population of Ukraine for 2 years. Instead, famine ravages the country.
It was a spoken order. Stalin gave it. That there was a definite plan, I knew from the instructions given us by Stanislav Kosyar, the secretary of the Communist Party of Ukraine. He said, "The kulak wants to crush our Soviet government with the bony hand of famine. We will bend this bony hand back on the throat of the kulak."
The Russians came from house to house and took all the foods that people had in the house, starting with grain, flour, wheat, or what barley or whatever they had, up to the last drop of food. They took the beets, the beans, potatoes, whatever they had in cellars or in the house. And besides that, they didn't trust them. They started searching the houses, looking all over, digging in the house and holes in the floors, digging in the ovens, ruining their ovens. And so they went from house to house and took everything from peasants.
(1931). The farmers crowd into the cities, selling heirlooms, anything, in order to buy the bread they themselves have produced. An internal passport system is introduced to deliberately confine them to their villages. 1932. Stalin condemns the Ukrainian party's urgent appeals to reduce quotas and send aid. He accuses them of placing local interests above the success of the 5-year plan. The war for bread is the war for socialism, he says. Stalin's trusted envoy, Pavel Postyshev, is given sweeping dictatorial powers and sent into Ukraine with an army of secret police to purge the Ukrainian party ranks. and to squeeze out the last kernels of grain. 112,000 trusted party members from Russia are now stationed in Ukraine. They guard the standing crops and livestock from the starving, brutally enforcing the law to protect state property.
This was a horrible law. If they saw a child picking a stalk of wheat, trying to eat those unripe grains, that was a very serious crime. This was a government order to punish anyone, even to death by execution.
Not only do all state quotas have to be met, but additional grain has to be set aside for seed and livestock before the collective farm workers get paid. 80% of the collectives fail to pay their workers anything at all. And a new draconian measure prevents the workers from searching for work elsewhere.
The collective farm where my father worked had stood since 1928. It was a good, strong farm. But although this was the best farm around, it was suffering even more than the others because they were disciplined and had everything organized on time. While government trucks would pull right up to the winnowing machines and take everything. They even took the chaff. My father was already swollen. Not too much, but his feet were swollen, and his eyes, all in the typical look of starvation. And in the house, there was nothing left but half a pumpkin, and that's all. I went to the collective farm to get horses. There, a friend of mine from the Communist Youth League said weakly, "You came to take your father away? Well, take him. Maybe he'll survive. But it's too late for us."
Village mothers, dying of hunger, throw their children onto trains heading into the cities in the desperate hope someone will take pity and feed them.
I entered the car, railroad car, and then I saw it was full of children. Some of them were enormously thin, but others were thin at the top of the body, but their legs were and stomachs were enormously swollen. Some of them had convulsions. In general, if a child was lying very quietly, we already knew this child will die soon.
During the day, people would hide. You couldn't see them anywhere. But at night, they would come out like shadows, lining up in front of the bread stores, hoping maybe to get some bread in the morning. Only homeless children could be seen walking in the streets. Homeless children and starving women in rags, and dead bodies, children stepping over them. That's how the city of Archів looked then.
It is hard to imagine how long those lines were for the so-called commercial bread. They lined up by the 1,000, or 2, or 3, and even as many as 7,000.
Andor Henke was the German consul stationed in Kiev. He and his family witnessed the horrors of the famine firsthand.
I ran out of the consulate because the Russian newspapers were reporting that there was a famine in Germany, but that everything was wonderful in Russia. I became very angry and took pictures of the corpses.
Da habe ich die Wut gekriegt und habe fotografiert.
Doch, ich habe also noch eine relativ lebhafte Erinnerung an die Zeit in Kiew.
I still have a very vivid memory of that time in Kiev. We were children at the time. My sister was 4 years younger than I. We lived in the consulate like in a golden cage. We weren't allowed to go out in the streets alone during this time. Nevertheless, I remember the misery and the famine very well. I remember seeing bodies everywhere, in doorways, on street corners. Wagons would take them away. They were picked up, thrown in, and driven away.
Aufgeladen, aufgeschmissen und abtransportiert.
Some of them were still alive, but they were all thrown on a pile and taken out of the city and thrown into a pit and covered with earth. The children, teenagers, girls, boys, went along stumbling and falling and begging for bread. I couldn't take it. I went home and I screamed and cried hysterically.
We survived thanks to parishioners, the railroad employees who had the chance to travel beyond the borders of Ukraine. And we had neighbors, Soviet officials. They always had food. We came through their garbage cans. We eat rotten potatoes, rotten cabbage and beets, and the scraps of food which they threw away. I am not ashamed to admit it, because it was a matter of survival. I didn't want to die.
When we reached the state farm and met the manager, he hired us to work there. He told us we would work at night, feeding the horses linseed cakes mixed with chopped straw. He said we should do this when people are asleep, because if they were awake, they would eat the horses' fodder. We said, how can we do that? People are more important than horses. But he said, we need the horses to cart the corpses away. They collected the corpses from the houses. A deep sleigh would stop at every house, and the men would ask, do you have any? Thank God, we have none. Then they'd stop at the next house. Have you got any? Yes. Well, bring them out. But I don't have the strength. Then 2 or 3 young men, themselves with swollen legs, would go into the house, bring out the corpse, and place it in the sleigh. They'd collect 2, 3, 4 a day.
In the spring, when my little sister died, her body lay in the house a whole week. We kept it until Mother came back from the state farm. People would come to our house and knock on the door every day, asking whether we had any corpses. We'd shout, no, we don't. Then the wagon would continue down the street collecting corpses. When Mother came home, we had to bury my sister. How could we bury her? There was nothing for a coffin. We wrapped her in a sheet, placed her on a sled, and took her to the cemetery. We put her between 2 coffins in a big grave. Coffins were placed on top also. And that's how we buried her.
Half a world away, kinsmen of the famine victims voice protests and form relief committees. Help is offered from Canada, the United States, Switzerland, France, Belgium. Cardinal Initzer initiates relief in Austria, Metropolitan Sheptytsky in western Ukraine. But all shipments of food grind to a halt at the Soviet border. The Soviet Red Cross flatly denies the existence of famine. The hands of the international organization are tied. Metropolitan Mstislav was then a deputy in the Polish parliament. He helped to organize relief efforts by Ukrainians living under Polish rule.
Our attempts to ship the grain into Ukraine were coordinated through the Soviet embassy in Warsaw. They told us this was not in their jurisdiction and that they would relay the request to the central government in Moscow. But Moscow's communications to us were, "What are you doing? Why would we need grain? We have had a wonderful harvest. There is no famine of any kind. This is nothing but anti-Soviet propaganda, that's all." So they gave us no hope of any kind that the grain would ever get there.
Spring 1933. The man-made famine reaches its height. 25,000 are dying every day. 1,000 an hour. 17 human beings every minute.
They tried to fool the people, telling them the famine was from natural causes. But the people saw that the famine was not from natural causes. No matter how hard they tried to hide the grain sealed inside mills and silos, people somehow found out there was plenty of grain, but they wouldn't give out any. Most of the grain was inside state mills. They were filled, and nobody was allowed near them. Some of it was piled high in the yard in sacks, covered with canvas, and it just rotted away. When I came to Mehedjuka that first time, all the bushes were still green, but when I came back, there was not a single leaf left. They ate it all. You couldn't hear a dog bark in the village, because they were eaten also.
We were told, "Children, it's very dangerous to go begging for food from house to house now. Terrible crimes are happening. You may not have heard, but a man who was going to the well for water or was coming back from the well fell and froze to death. His wife cut off pieces of his flesh and ate them."
My cousin, who was much younger than I, had 3 children. And those 3 children were eaten by their neighbors.
A directive issued by the Justice Department ensures that no official records of cannibalism are kept. All such cases are withdrawn from the courts and dealt with behind the closed doors of the OGPU secret police. Having killed a quarter of the nation's population, the Soviets staged one of the greatest cover-ups in history. At a grain conference in London, the Soviets campaigned vigorously to raise their grain export quotas from 25 to 85 million bushels of wheat. The scheme is effective. Few can imagine a state exporting grain at the cost of its own people's lives. Indignant over the mass unemployment and hardships in their own countries, many influential socialist sympathizers unwittingly rally to Moscow's defense. George Bernard Shaw and a party of leading British socialites visit the USSR and report quite truthfully that the restaurants where they eat are full of food. Another important foreign guest to receive the red carpet treatment is former French Prime Minister Édouard Herriot. He is actually given a 5-day guided tour of Ukraine at the height of the famine. His favorable impressions of the country receive widespread publicity.
I would like to thank the government and the people of the Soviet Union for their warm reception.
Johann von Herwart was a young attaché at the German embassy in Moscow, and after the Second World War, German ambassador to Great Britain. He recalls how the Soviets stage-managed Herriot's entire trip.
The famous visit of the president of the French cabinet, Herriot, when he came to Kiev, then he had the impression that everything was all right in Kiev. The streets were well cleaned through which he drove. He got a wonderful breakfast in his hotel, and then in the streets there were trucks labeled bread, and bread was unloaded, and everything seemed to be fine. And then he went to see a collective farm, and when he spoke to the farmers, nobody knows if they were really farmers or put there just for the inspection of Herriot. They told him that everything was fine, much better than under the Tsars. And he came home and said, there's no famine in Ukraine. The peasants are very happy.
Idealized scenes of work and happy peasant life are the staple diet in Soviet movie theaters as the famine rages on. A sensational show trial is staged in Moscow to further help distract the Soviet people from the failures of the 5-year plan. 6 British engineers working in the USSR face the death sentence on trumped-up charges of sabotage, espionage, and bribery. The interest the trial arouses in the West gives the Soviets extra leverage to muzzle the foreign press corps. Correspondents are bluntly told that if they want access to the trial, they are not to mention the famine in their dispatches. Having served their purpose, the British saboteurs are eventually released. Malcolm Muggeridge arrived in the USSR in 1932. He was one of the very few journalists to defy the Soviet travel ban and report on the real conditions in the countryside.
I don't think that foreigners realize sufficiently how completely the Soviet authorities can control the foreign press. The censorship worked simply that if you wrote a message, you had to take it along to the press department. I mean, the telegraph company wouldn't accept it unless it was stamped by them. You had to submit it to them. And they would read it through, and they would say, you can't say that. As I began to be very critical of the whole setup, to criticize the use of terrorism by the government, the articles that I wrote on the famine would undoubtedly, I would have had to leave. But I sent those over in a diplomatic bag. They would never have got out of the country otherwise. And I left before they had appeared.
For every article on the famine that appeared, 2 were published denying its existence. Muggeridge recalls the most influential correspondent in Moscow was Walter Duranty, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist for the New York Times.
He was not only the greatest liar among the journalists in Moscow, but he was the greatest liar